Hey, did you guys know that a new Fantastic Beasts movie came out? Judging by the box office, a lot of you didn't. Those Harry Potter movies and Harry Potter related movies have always been, guaranteed box office gold. But with this new one coming out and not doing, quite the numbers that Warner Brothers would have wanted it to, it makes you wonder, are they going to go ahead and keep making these movies like they have said that they're going to? There are still supposed to be 2 more of these Harry Potter movies, right? And frankly, I couldn't care one way or the other on whether or not they get made. But it does make me think about the idea of these sequels that have been promised and that never actually came out. So with that as our jumping point, let's take a look at some other movies that had some sequels that we were guaranteed, but then they never actually came to fruition. So these are going to be movies that are based on finished stories. For example, we have the Chronicles of Narnia. They were able to put out 3 of those movies, right? The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and all of those movies came out. But then they just kind of stopped. And why? Because the same reason all of these movies stopped getting made. They just aren't making enough money. It isn't always just books, though. You look back to the live action version of Avatar: The Last Airbender when that was released after being directed by M. Night Shyamalan in 2010. They don't make the first one of those movies and say, no, we don't want to make the rest of the story. It bombs at the box office. People don't like it. It gets bad reviews. People just, rail on that movie for, the better part of a decade and a half, I guess, at this point. And it just dies. And so that's why we never saw, a conclusion or a continuation of that story. Or we look to the Percy Jackson movies, which is another one where they just didn't do very well. And it's even kind of a miracle that they made a second one of those movies, right? They made the first one, The Lightning Thief, and then they made Sea of Monsters after that. But with that second one coming out and just doing lackluster numbers, again, it was inevitable that they were going to say, no, we're not going to keep going with this one. But when it comes to these type of sequels, the one that is my favorite is the Divergent series. And the reason it's my favorite is because, now not in like the kind of movie that it is, but my favorite story on why and how the sequels didn't get made is that they were really kind of at the end of that dystopian youth kind of subgenre that was coming out, with the Hunger Games and all that stuff. And so the first Divergent comes out, and it does all right. And then the second one comes out, it's called Insurgent. Allegiant comes out and does even worse. And then the studio decides to say, well, instead of making another movie, we're going to do it as TV. And, maybe that would fly better nowadays. But back then, the people who were in the movie were like, well, I don't want to be a part of a TV show. That's not what I signed up for. And they just all bailed. And because of that, we just don't have the last chapter in this series of movies. And to me, as somebody who is not invested in the story at all, that is actually really funny. But sometimes we get teased sequels where there's, a setup for what's going to happen next. And these kind of sequels, and they go way back, and probably even further back than what I'm going to mention here, back to the Masters of the Universe, a movie that starred Dolph Lundgren based on the He-Man cartoon, right? What happens at the end of that movie? You get a tease that Skeletor, the main bad guy who you were shown that he died, right? He's not actually dead. Then you have what I've talked about on the channel before. The Super Mario Bros. Movie ends with what? With Princess Daisy showing up, and that never happens. Sometimes it can be really disappointing, if you know the source material at all, like with the Green Lantern movie, where at the end of it, Sinestro turns from being a Green Lantern into a Yellow Lantern. It was exciting because Mark Strong is, the best part of that movie, probably. I haven't seen it in a while. But having this, tease of him being the big bad, Green Lantern, Hal Jordan's, worst enemy going to be in the next one was, kind of exciting. And to know that just is never going to happen now, it was disappointing. And then there's the Justice League, which set up the Legion of Doom with, Deathstroke coming and meeting with Lex Luthor. Obviously, that's not being continued. But then my favorite one of these is with the Independence Day 2, right? Independence Day Resurgence, which if you didn't see it, hey, that's why there's not an Independence Day 3. You're not alone in that one. The movie ends with the humans teaming up with some good aliens to go and fight the bad aliens. And the scientist says,
We are gonna kick some serious alien ass.
And then it's just hilarious to me that that is where the series ends. And it's just so funny to me because I can imagine these studio executives being like, this is money in the bank. People are going to be so excited. They're going to be in the theater, like pumping their fists when this happens. And then it's just like a complete like silence dud, and it just goes nowhere. I do think it's important to mention the fact that, it isn't always completely a loss, right? Sometimes there is hope, even for these movies that don't end up getting the sequel that we originally think that they should have, right? So I think back to the Godzilla, the American Godzilla was made in 1998, right? There's a tease at the end of that movie where a baby Godzilla is going to be there. You're like, oh, this is what the next movie is going to be. Next movie never came about, but they did use that tease as the jumping off point for the cartoon for the Godzilla movie, which is actually pretty good. And then especially with how creative some of these studios are getting nowadays, with bringing back different actors from roles from the past. You get things like Andrew Garfield showing up as Spider-Man in Spider-Man No Way Home. When you watch The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and then the fact that the third one didn't come out, even though that whole second movie is just teasing another movie that never comes out. There's always hope and possibilities for these things to come back in ways that are unexpected. And I just want to close out this video by mentioning my all-time favorite studio putting the cart in front of the horse that I have ever heard about. And that is, of course, the dark universe that Universal was putting out, starting with 2017's The Mummy, starring Tom Cruise. See, Tom Cruise, he's like one of the last true bona fide blockbuster actors. Like, he is a face that people see and they're like, that's a movie star. And I'm gonna go see a Tom Cruise movie. And they were banking on that with The Mummy. And here's the thing, that movie is not great. And it wasn't great from the time the trailers were coming out. Like, I don't know if you know about this, but it's one of my favorite like trailer things ever, is that they released the Mummy trailer with incomplete audio. It's just very funny. But anyway, from that point moving forward, like, this movie did not do well, and it didn't make the kind of money that they wanted it to make. And this is so like devastating to Universal, because they were completely planning on building their own extended universe starting here, in the same way that Disney, well, not Disney at the time, but Marvel started their own cinematic universe with Iron Man. That's what Universal wanted to do with their Universal monsters, like Dracula, The Mummy, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Frankenstein, all of those starting here with The Mummy and Tom Cruise. And then this movie underperforms, and they have to just kind of ditch these plans. Now, a lot of the time, these plans get ditched and they're kind of in the background, right? We might have a little tease here or there. But they were so sure of themselves that they put out like this big press release with this big photo with these actors on it, and talking about who they were going to be playing in these movies that were coming out. And it is one of two tweets on the Dark Universe's Twitter account. And the fact that it's still there and you can still go and see it, to me, is just like, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful failure. And to see something so big, like a movie studio, fail so hard, it just, I don't know. It's just fun. It's just fun to see every once in a while. And you could tell for sure that Universal was done moving forward with their Dark Universe, because just, 3 years later, when The Invisible Man came out, which was originally supposed to be a part of that Dark Universe, with Johnny Depp being the Invisible Man, they just went a completely different direction with it. And those are just some, different sequels that we were kind of promised, and they never happened. And so I'm curious, what's the sequel to a movie that you are the most disappointed that you didn't get to see? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I appreciate you being here. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye.